Coming up on Network Africa, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa vows to tackle corruption in the ruling party as the ANC wins the country's parliamentary elections. Talks resume between protest leaders in Sudan and the military in a bid to reach an agreement on a political transition. Plus, a court in Egypt sentences 2 men to death for an attack on Coptic Christians in 2017. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Tenyola Shobowale. Let's begin today by taking a look at some of the stories that made headlines over the weekend.
Survivors of a migrant boat which capsized in the Mediterranean Sea after leaving Libya received treatment at a Red Crescent Center in the town of Zazes, Tunisia on Saturday. At least 65 migrants drowned in the tragic incident. Some of the survivors recount the ordeal.
We were in a large boat. We sailed a little bit, then they put us in a small boat. There were 75 of us. Because of how many people were on the boat, it started filling up with water. It then sunk and capsized. This was 12 o'clock at midnight. We kept floating in the water until 8 o'clock in the morning. A small Tunisian boat then came to our rescue. Thank God.
Meanwhile, hostages freed by French commandos from militants in Burkina Faso offered their condolences on Saturday to the families of the 2 French soldiers killed in the rescue operation. In a daring raid over the night of May 9th to 10th, French special forces liberated 2 Frenchmen kidnapped in neighboring Benin more than a week earlier, as well as an American woman and a South Korean woman who were being held with them. Still in Burkina Faso, on Sunday, gunmen killed 6 people, including a priest, as Mass was being celebrated in a church in Dablo in northern Burkina Faso. The attack is set to number between 20 and 30, then burned down the church. Jihadist violence has fled in Burkina Faso since 2016, and this is the 3rd attack on a church in 5 weeks. In South Africa, African National Congress ANC supporters celebrated on the streets of Soweto, Johannesburg on Saturday after the party swept to victory in the country's general elections.
ANC is the oldest party in South Africa.
To supporters of President Cyril Ramaphosa, the ANC victory is an endorsement of his corruption-fighting agenda after he replaced former President Jacob Zuma. Despite the ANC's victory, it was the worst electoral performance by Mandela's former liberation movement, which has governed South Africa since the country's first free election that marked the end of white minority rule in 1994.
Now, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has vowed to purge the African National Congress of corruption following the party's victory in parliamentary elections last week. Speaking at a victory celebration at the ANC headquarters in Johannesburg, Mr. Ramaphosa says he will only appoint capable leaders and visionaries to the cabinet. The ANC won 58% of the vote in the election, its lowest majority since it took power at the end of apartheid in 1994.
We are saying thank you to the people of South Africa for returning the only organization that can take our country forward, the one and only glorious movement of our people, the African National Congress. This is a new era, Congress. We are going to do things differently. We are going to do things effectively. We are going to make sure that we inject growth in our economy. We are going to make sure we invite investors to come and invest. We are going to make sure that we give the young people of our country great opportunities so that young people can get ahead in life.
Let's get more on this story from a member of a civil society group, Zora Dawood. She is a member of One Africa Policy and Advisory Board. Thanks for joining us on the program. So the ANC has won the country's parliamentary elections with a reduced majority. What should South Africans expect from the new government?
I think that's the million-dollar question, because it is a blow to the ANC that 25 years into democracy, their performance at the ballots has actually diminished. And this, I think, is a serious wake-up call for the party. Whether the party will take cognizance is the big question, because we're not talking about an ANC as a homogenous party. We know that there are a multitude of factions within the party. And this election was really, for many people, it was, I'm voting for Cyril Ramaphosa and not necessarily for the ANC. So essentially people were professing that they wanted to strengthen his hand within the ANC in order to have a more cohesive governing party in power.
A report by Times Magazine has highlighted the poverty level in the country and also identified South Africa as the world's most unequal country. Could the issue of land expropriation be the solution to this problem?
I think the issue of land is critical. However, an important issue that emerged at the ballot was a number of parties, including the Black First, Land First political party that registered and fought the elections, and the EFF, did not do as well as they thought they would do on the basis of that critical land issue platform. I don't think any of the parties, particularly the ANC, has refuted the fact that inequality is high, that there is no economic growth to alter the status quo. So that is an issue, but I don't think land per se and the issue of expropriation of land played as big a role in how people voted. Now, one would assume that if you look at the population pyramid in South Africa, South Africa's got a base of very young people, millions of young people, and that's the large majority of voters, but very many of those young people did not register to vote, and obviously flowing from that, they could not vote and did not vote. So I think that speaks volumes to all of the parties, whether these were left Black nationalist parties or more moderate right of center, or political parties like Cyril Ramaphosa's ANC, that is quite a centrist sort of party. The issue of land did not necessarily sway the vote. I think the issue of inequality is a profound issue, and this is going to be one of the issues that Cyril Ramaphosa is going to have to address. Related to inequality is that of corruption, state capture, etc. And unless Cyril Ramaphosa shows that he is making inroads into these issues, and the concomitant issue is that of growth, and growth will drive down inequality. Unless he's able to demonstrate that, I think he's going to have an enormously difficult task on his hands, particularly as South Africans go to the local government elections. And often, as you know, local government elections are a better barometer of how people are thinking about service delivery and more bread and butter issues. So that's coming up in 2 years. So that isn't a long time for the governing party to make inroads.
We'll have to see. Cyril Ramaphosa has vowed to, rid of corruption. We'll have to see if he does, well, walk the talk. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa, Zora Dawood. She is a member of One Africa Policy and Advisory Board. Thank you so much for speaking to us on Network Africa. Moving on to other stories, security forces in Sudan have dispersed protesters and removed blockades from roads in the capital, Khartoum. Several cars full of police and the rapid support forces were deployed to the north of the city, and there are reports that tear gas was used. A sit-in outside the Hamia quarters is continued as protesters call on the military council to hand over to a civilian administration. Talks between the military and the opposition coalition were supposed to resume today after efforts to agree on a joint civilian-military body to oversee the country stalled. Media reports say there is growing frustration among the Sudanese population as it becomes clear that the military generals are determined to hold on to power. Now, a court in Egypt has sentenced 2 men to death for an attack on Coptic Christians in 2017 that killed 10 people. A gunman first opened fire on a Christian-owned shop in Cairo, then shot at worshippers at the entrance to a nearby church. The Islamic State group claimed responsibility for the attack. One of the 2 men sentenced to death was tried in absentia. 2 other defendants were given life jail terms. Let's get more on this story from the VOA's Edward Yeranian. Thank you for joining us on Network Africa. So how are Egyptians, especially the Copts, reacting to the death sentence handed down to the 2 men who attacked Coptic Christians in 2017?
Well, Tenny, there is rarely any official reaction from the church leaders. It's not something they do. They don't like to do it. Many of them think it looks bad. They don't like to gloat. On the ground level, though, I sense that there is some sort of satisfaction over the court ruling, since many times crimes go unpunished. And yet at the same time, I think Copts are known for not being seeking revenge in many cases. You see in the media that Copts are frequently expressing their displeasure with the government, but I sense that's mostly the media trying to create a problem rather than a problem that's actually there on the ground.
Okay, Ed, we understand one of the men was tried in absentia and 2 were given jail terms instead of the death sentence. Help us understand this. Why is this so?
Trials in absentia are that is to say, sentences in absentia are given to people who are not present in the court's jurisdiction, which means when they eventually resurface or are caught, they will have another trial. That is automatic. So sentencing someone to death by absentia is mostly for show, because that person will get another trial anyway and may not necessarily be sentenced to death. In other cases, sentences are meted out given that people are able to appeal these sentences. So a rough sentence is given out on the first trial can be reversed on the second or third appeals, which are part of the Egyptian judicial system.
All right then, Ed, thank you so much for speaking to us on Network Africa and helping us understand that a little bit more. Still to come on the program. Dozens of state officials in Kenya have been arrested in what is billed as the biggest anti-corruption operation in the country. Please stay with us.